Hey guys, tonight we take a slow, quiet journey through the ancient tale of Prometheus and why his divine existence was far more burdensome than glorious. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's watching from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's story. Picture the world in its earliest morning, when the earth was still soft and malleable like wet clay after rain. The sun barely whispers above the horizon, casting long shadows across valleys that have never known human footsteps. You stand at the edge of what will become civilization, watching as divine hands shape the very first forms of mankind. The air carries the scent of fresh earth and dew, mixed with something indefinable, the essence of potential itself. Prometheus kneels beside a riverbank where the clay is perfect, neither too wet nor too dry, with a consistency that reminds you of the pottery your grandmother might have made on quiet Sunday afternoons. His fingers work methodically through the dawn hours, each movement deliberate and careful. The clay responds to his touch like it has been waiting eons for this moment, yielding and shaping under the pressure of divine will. You can hear the soft squelching sounds as he presses and molds, occasionally dipping his hands in the cool river water to keep the clay workable. The silence around him is profound, broken only by the gentle lapping of water against the bank and the distant call of birds who have no idea they are witnessing the birth of humanity. Steam rises from the warming earth as the sun climbs higher, creating a misty atmosphere that makes everything seem dreamlike and ethereal. Prometheus works with the patience of someone who has all the time in the world, yet there's an urgency in his movements that suggests he knows this window of opportunity won't last forever. The clay figures begin to take shape under his hands. Torsos, limbs, faces that will soon hold the spark of consciousness. Each figure is unique, crafted with individual care and attention. Some are tall and lean, others shorter and more robust, as if Prometheus already understands that diversity will be humanity's strength. His breath comes in steady rhythm, occasionally misting in the cool morning air, as he leans close to add delicate details to a face or adjust the curve of a hand. The work is tedious and repetitive, like spending hours on a jigsaw puzzle where every piece looks exactly the same until you find its perfect place. The river continues its gentle murmur, providing a constant soundtrack to creation. Prometheus occasionally pauses to stretch his back or flex his fingers. Divine though he may be, the repetitive motions of crafting take their toll. You watch as he creates what will become the first families, the first communities, shaping not just bodies but the foundation of all human civilization with nothing more than wet earth and infinite patience. As the morning progresses, rows of clay figures line the riverbank like a terracotta army waiting for orders. Each one lies still and silent, perfectly formed but lacking that essential spark that will transform them from sculpture to soul. Prometheus surveys his work with the satisfaction of someone who has spent the night assembling furniture and finally sees all the pieces fitting together perfectly. The weight of what he's creating begins to settle on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. These aren't just figures. They're the future of an entire species, each one destined for joy and sorrow, triumph and failure, love and loss. The responsibility is enormous, perhaps more than any single being should bear. Yet he continues his work with steady determination. Creating life, even for a titan, turns out to be surprisingly mundane work. Hours pass in repetitive motions, the same basic form repeated with slight variations, like a cosmic assembly line where the product happens to be humanity. The clay beneath his knees grows warm from the sun, and his robes become stained with earth and river water, divine garments reduced to work clothes. So as the sun reaches its zenith and the clay figures lie ready for the breath of life, Prometheus feels both the satisfaction of creation and the first stirrings of the burden that will define his existence. And so we move from this moment of pure creation to witness the loneliness that comes with being the architect of an entire species' destiny. The afternoon sun beats down mercilessly on the rows of clay figures, and you feel the oppressive heat that comes with divine responsibility. Prometheus sits alone among his creations, surrounded by hundreds of forms that look human but remain as silent as the stones scattered along the riverbank. The silence is deeper than any mortal could imagine. It's the quiet that comes before the first word is ever spoken, before the first laugh or cry echoes across the earth. His divine nature means he needs no rest, no food, no water, yet something within him feels drained by the morning's work. The loneliness of creation settles around him like dust, coating everything with a fine layer of isolation that even divine power cannot sweep away. You watch as he moves between the figures, adjusting a hand here, smoothing a brow there. These small perfectionist touches that come from having nothing but time and an overwhelming sense that everything must be exactly right. The clay has begun to dry slightly in the heat, taking on a more permanent quality that makes the figures seem almost real from a distance. Up close, though, they remain empty vessels, beautiful shells waiting for the spark that will make them truly alive. The river continues its endless conversation with the banks, a sound that has become both comforting and maddening in its consistency. Prometheus finds himself listening to it with the intensity of someone who has been alone too long, finding patterns and meaning in the simple splash and gurgle of water over stone. Every ripple seems to whisper possibilities about what these clay forms might become, what dreams they might dream, what songs they might sing. Birds occasionally land near the figures, pecking curiously at the clay before flying away, unimpressed by these strange new additions to their world. A butterfly settles on the nose of one figure, its wings opening and closing in the gentle breeze, and for a moment Prometheus imagines that the figure might twitch, might breathe, might suddenly open its eyes and ask where it is. But the moment passes, and the clay remains clay. The afternoon stretches endlessly before him, each hour marked only by the slow progression of shadows across the ground. Divine immortality, which should be a blessing, feels more like a curse when you're surrounded by the fruits of your labor, but unable to truly share the moment with anyone. The other gods are busy with their own affairs, and even if they weren't, none of them would truly understand the mixture of pride and anxiety that comes with creating an entire species from scratch. He begins to pace among the figures, his sandals leaving impressions in the soft earth that will be the first footprints these humans will ever see. The responsibility weighs on him more heavily with each passing hour. What if he's made them too fragile? What if they can't survive the harsh realities of the world? What if they're too strong and become a threat to the natural order? These questions circle through his mind like vultures, feeding on his uncertainty and growing stronger with each repetition. The loneliness becomes a physical presence, settling in his chest like a stone. He created these beings to be companions for each other, to build communities and families, to never have to face the world alone as he does now. Yet here he sits, surrounded by the future of human connection, completely isolated in his divine nature. It's like being the only person who speaks a language, having so much to say but no one who can understand the words. As the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Prometheus realizes that this moment of creation is also a moment of separation. Once these figures come to life, they will be independent beings with their own thoughts and desires. They will no longer be entirely his, and in a way he will be even more alone than he is now. The irony isn't lost on him. In creating companions for humanity, he's ensuring his own eternal solitude. The evening breeze picks up, stirring the hair he's so carefully sculpted on each figure, and making them seem to shiver with anticipation. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls, and the sound carries across the empty landscape like a preview of all the wild challenges these humans will face. Prometheus pulls his robes tighter around himself, feeling cold despite his divine nature, chilled by the magnitude of what he's about to unleash upon the world. So as the first day of creation draws to a close and the clay figures wait in patient silence for the spark of life, Prometheus learns that the power to create comes with the price of perpetual loneliness. And so we follow him into the depths of night, where the real work of bringing humanity to life begins in the quiet hours when the rest of the world sleeps. Night falls like a soft blanket over the riverside, and you find yourself in that magical hour when the world holds its breath between day and dreams. The clay figures lie in neat rows, their forms barely visible in the starlight, like sleeping soldiers waiting for reveille. Prometheus moves among them with the quiet purpose of someone about to perform the most important task of his immortal existence. The air is cool and still, perfect for the delicate work ahead. Each breath he takes seems to echo in the silence, a reminder that soon these empty forms will share that same rhythm of life that marks all living things. You can smell the lingering dampness of the clay mixed with the green scent of grass and the faint sweetness of night-blooming flowers somewhere upstream. Prometheus kneels beside the first figure, a woman with gentle features and hands that seem ready to embrace the world. He leans close, and you can see the concentration in his divine features, the weight of responsibility etched in every line of his face. This moment has been building since the dawn of time, and now it rests in the space between his lips and hers. The first breath flows from him like a whisper, warm and golden, carrying with it not just life but all the potential that life contains. You watch as the clay chest rises ever so slightly, the faintest movement that signals the transition from sculpture to soul. Her eyes flutter open, dark and curious, reflecting the stars above like twin pools of wonder. She blinks once, twice, then sits up slowly, her movements uncertain but graceful, like someone waking from the deepest sleep imaginable. Prometheus moves to the next figure, then the next, each breath a gift that transforms clay into consciousness. The process is exhausting in ways that physical labor never could be. Each life he creates takes something from him, a piece of his own divine essence transferred to these new beings. It's like sharing your lunch with 30 people and somehow feeling satisfied that everyone got fed, even though you're left a little hungry yourself. The newly awakened humans sit up one by one, their eyes adjusting to the starlight, their minds struggling to process the overwhelming experience of existing for the first time. Some reach out tentatively to touch their own faces, marveling at the sensation of skin against skin. Others look around in wonder at their companions, recognizing something familiar in features that mirror their own. The silence breaks gradually as they begin to make soft sounds. Not quite words yet, but the building blocks of language forming in their throats. You notice how they instinctively reach for each other, hands finding hands in the darkness, seeking connection and comfort in this strange new world. Their movements are clumsy at first, like newborn animals learning to use their limbs, but there's an inherent grace in their humanity that shines through the awkwardness. They help each other stand, supporting one another with an instinct for community that Prometheus built into their very bones. The night air carries their soft murmurs and gentle laughter as they discover the simple joy of being alive. Some wander toward the river, drawn by the sound of flowing water, while others remain close to where they first awakened, content to explore the miracle of their own existence. Prometheus watches from a distance, his heart swelling with pride and breaking with the knowledge that his children are already beginning to move away from him. The stars seem brighter tonight, as if the universe itself is celebrating this moment of creation. A gentle breeze stirs the grass and rustles through the leaves of nearby trees, creating a soft symphony that serves as the soundtrack to humanity's first hours. The new humans lift their faces to feel the wind on their skin, some closing their eyes in pleasure at this first sensory experience of the world beyond themselves. As the night progresses, you see them beginning to form small groups, drawn together by invisible threads of compatibility and shared wonder. They point at the stars, at the river, at each other, their faces bright with curiosity and joy. Their first attempts at communication are clumsy but earnest, hands gesturing toward objects they want to understand, voices making sounds that will eventually become words, then sentences, then stories, then entire civilizations built on the foundation of language. Prometheus realizes that his role as their creator is already shifting to something more like a distant guardian. They no longer need him to breathe life into them. They're creating their own momentum now, their own purposes and connections. The bittersweet nature of parenthood, even divine parenthood, becomes clear in these quiet pre-dawn hours when his children take their first independent steps into the world. The river continues its eternal song, and the humans gradually grow quiet as the night deepens, some curling up together for warmth and comfort, others remaining wakeful and alert, watching the stars while overhead in patterns they don't yet understand but somehow find deeply meaningful. Their collective breathing creates a new rhythm in the night, dozens of lives in sync with the pulse of the world itself. So as dawn approaches and the first humans settle into their initial sleep, Prometheus feels both the satisfaction of successful creation and the first pangs of separation from his beloved children. And so we move forward to witness his growing concern for their welfare and the dangerous lengths to which his love will drive him. Dawn breaks with a cruel clarity that reveals just how fragile these new humans truly are. You stand with Prometheus as he watches his children wake to their second day of existence, and you can feel the cold morning air that makes them shiver and huddle together for warmth. Their clay-born bodies, so perfect in form, lack the natural protections that other creatures take for granted: no thick fur, no layer of fat, no instinctive knowledge of shelter building or food gathering. The morning dew has settled on their naked skin, and you can see how they tremble in the chill, their lips taking on a bluish tint that speaks of genuine discomfort. Some have wandered too close to the river during the night and wake with their feet muddy and cold, while others have chosen sleeping spots that offer no protection from the wind that sweeps across the open ground. You watch as they attempt to warm themselves by rubbing their arms and moving their bodies, discovering through trial and error the basic principles of generating heat. Some try to break branches from nearby trees to create windbreaks, but their soft hands, unmarked by calluses or scars, blister easily against the rough bark. They're learning the hard way that existence comes with a price, and that price is often paid in discomfort and struggle. Prometheus feels each shiver as if it were his own, each small cry of distress echoing in his divine heart like a bell tolling for his failures as a creator. He had focused so intently on making them beautiful and intelligent that he had forgotten to consider the practical realities of survival in a world that shows no mercy to the unprepared. The guilt settles on his shoulders like a wet cloak, heavy and cold and impossible to remove. The humans begin to explore their surroundings more deliberately, driven by the basic needs that all living creatures share. They discover wild berries growing on bushes near the river, but some of the fruit is bitter or causes stomach upset, leading to their first experience with the consequences of poor choices. You can see the confusion in their faces as they try to understand why something that looks so appealing can cause such discomfort. Trial and error becomes their teacher, and error seems to be winning the early lessons. Their feet, soft and tender from their clay origins, begin to show cuts and bruises from walking on rocky ground and thorny undergrowth. Some attempt to fashion crude coverings from large leaves, but the materials either tear easily or provide inadequate protection. The simple act of movement, which should be natural and effortless, becomes a source of constant minor pain and frustration. Walking across a field of stubble is like trying to navigate a room full of furniture in the dark. Possible, but guaranteed to leave you with a few bumps and bruises. The sun climbs higher, bringing its own challenges as the humans discover the harsh reality of exposure to its rays. Their pale skin, never before touched by sunlight, begins to redden and burn despite the relatively mild morning light. Some seek shade under trees, but the ground beneath is often damp and uncomfortable, forcing them to choose between the burning sun and the chill of wet earth. There's no perfect choice, only the endless series of compromises that define mortal existence. Prometheus watches as they attempt to drink from the river, cupping water in their hands only to have most of it slip through their fingers before reaching their mouths. The inefficiency of their efforts is painful to observe. Divine beings have no need for such crude methods of sustaining themselves, and seeing his children struggle with the basics of survival feels like watching a master craftsman forced to work with broken tools. Hunger becomes a constant companion as the day progresses, gnawing at their stomachs and making them increasingly desperate in their search for edible plants and fruits. Some resort to digging in the earth with their bare hands, hoping to find roots or tubers, but the soil is hard and their soft fingers are ill-equipped for such work. The romantic notion of living in harmony with nature quickly gives way to the harsh reality that nature is often more interested in testing than nurturing. You notice how they begin to look at each other differently as the day wears on. The initial wonder and joy of existence gradually replaced by a growing awareness of their shared vulnerability. They form small groups based on practical considerations, those who are better at finding food, those who seem to have a knack for identifying safe shelter, those who can provide comfort when the fears and frustrations become overwhelming. Survival begins to shape their relationships in ways that Prometheus never anticipated. The afternoon brings new challenges as a light rain begins to fall, turning the ground muddy and making their already difficult situation even more precarious. They have no understanding of weather patterns, no ability to predict or prepare for changes in conditions. The rain catches them in the open, and they can only huddle together and endure, their hair plastered to their heads and their bodies shaking with cold. It's like being caught in a sudden downpour without an umbrella, except they don't even know what an umbrella is. As evening approaches and the temperature begins to drop, Prometheus can no longer bear to watch his children suffer. The love that drove him to create them now compels him to act, even if it means risking the wrath of the other gods. The decision forms slowly in his mind, like ice crystallizing on a winter pond. Inevitable, beautiful, and potentially dangerous for anyone who ventures onto its surface. So as the second night of human existence begins with his children cold, hungry, and afraid, Prometheus makes the choice that will define the rest of his immortal existence. And so we follow him as he prepares to steal the one thing that can transform his vulnerable creations into masters of their own destiny. In the deepest part of the night, when even the nocturnal creatures have settled into quiet rest, you find yourself in the realm of divine contemplation where Prometheus wrestles with the weight of his decision. The darkness around him seems to pulse with possibility and danger in equal measure, like standing at the edge of a cliff where one step forward could mean either flight or fall. His children sleep fitfully below, their soft whimpers and restless movements a constant reminder of their fragility. The plan begins to form in his mind with the slow certainty of sunrise, each element falling into place with an inevitability that both thrills and terrifies him. He knows the location of Hephaestus's forge, hidden deep within the volcanic heart of Mount Etna, where the god of fire and metalworking creates wonders that shame the works of mortals. You can almost see the gears turning in his divine mind as he considers the logistics of his theft. The forge is heavily guarded, not by sentries but by the very nature of its location. surrounded by rivers of molten rock and chambers filled with poisonous gases that would kill any mortal who dared approach. But Prometheus is no mortal, and his love for humanity has given him a courage that even he didn't know he possessed. The knowledge that his children are suffering while he has the power to help them burns in his chest like a coal that refuses to cool. The night air carries the scent of dew and earth, mixed with the faint smoke from distant volcanic activity that serves as a constant reminder of the forge's location. Prometheus paces among the sleeping humans, his footsteps silent on the soft ground, his mind racing through the possible consequences of his actions. Zeus's anger will be terrible, the punishment severe, but the alternative, watching his children struggle and die in the cold darkness, is unthinkable. He pauses beside a young woman who shivers in her sleep, her arms wrapped around herself in a futile attempt to find warmth. Her lips are blue with cold, and her breathing comes in small, visible puffs that dissipate quickly in the night air. The sight strengthens his resolve like steel tempered in flame, burning away his doubts and leaving only the pure metal of determination. These humans deserve better than a life of constant struggle against the elements. The stars above seem to wink at him conspiratorially, as if the universe itself approves of his planned rebellion against the natural order. An owl hoots somewhere in the distance, and Prometheus takes it as a sign that wisdom lies in action rather than passive observation. The time for watching and worrying has passed. Now comes the time for decisive movement, for the kind of bold stroke that separates heroes from bystanders. You watch as he begins to formulate the specific details of his approach to the forge. The timing will be crucial. Hephaestus follows a predictable routine, spending the early morning hours in his workshop on the surface before descending to the deeper chambers where the truly divine flames burn. There will be a window of opportunity, brief but sufficient for someone with Prometheus's knowledge and determination. It's like planning a heist, except the security system is run by gods and the penalty for failure is eternal torment. The sleeping humans seem to sense something momentous approaching, their collective breathing creating a rhythm that matches the racing of Prometheus's heart. Some mutter in their sleep, fragments of the language they're still learning, words like cold and hungry, and help that cut through his divine composure like knives. Their vulnerability is both their weakness and their strength. It makes them fragile, but it also makes them worthy of protection. Prometheus realizes that this decision will change everything, not just for himself but for the entire relationship between gods and mortals. Fire is more than just warmth and light. It's the foundation of civilization, the tool that will allow his children to transform from shivering survivors into builders of cities and creators of wonders. The gift he's planning to steal will echo through the ages, sparking innovations and discoveries that will reshape the world itself. The weight of future history settles on his shoulders as he contemplates the chain of events his actions will set in motion. Cooking, metalworking, pottery, glassmaking, all the arts and sciences that depend on controlled flame will flow from this single act of theft. But so too will war, destruction, and the thousand ways that humans will find to use fire against each other. The gift he's planning to give is like handing a child a tool that could build a house or burn it down. The potential for both creation and destruction lies inherent in the flame itself. Dawn begins to lighten the eastern sky, painting the horizon in shades of gold and pink that remind him of the flames he's planning to steal. The humans begin to stir, their movements slow and reluctant as they face another day of cold and hunger. Some sit up and look around with expressions of hope, as if the new day might bring solutions to their problems. Others remain curled in tight balls, reluctant to leave the small warmth they've managed to generate during the night. The contrast between their hope and their reality breaks something inside Prometheus's divine heart. They trust that existence is good, that life is worth living, even as they struggle with the basic requirements of survival. Their faith in the value of their own lives shames him into action. If they can believe in the worth of their existence despite its hardships, then he can certainly risk punishment to improve their circumstances. So as the sun rises on the third day of human existence and his children prepare to face another day of cold and hunger, Prometheus finalizes his decision to steal fire from the gods. And so we follow him as he begins the journey that will transform him from creator to criminal, from divine observer to active participant in the struggle between order and compassion. The path to Mount Etna winds through landscapes that shift between the mundane and the mystical, and you walk alongside Prometheus as he makes his way toward the most consequential theft in the history of divine mortal relations. The morning sun casts long shadows across valleys that have witnessed the birth of the world, and each step he takes feels weighted with the gravity of impending betrayal. His sandals whisper against the ancient stone paths that connect the realms of gods and mortals. The air grows warmer as he approaches the volcanic region, carrying with it the sulfurous scent of underground fires and the metallic tang of worked metal. You can feel the heat rising from the earth itself, a reminder that he's entering the domain of Hephaestus, where the very ground pulses with divine flame. Prometheus passes through forests where the trees grow tall and straight, their branches reaching toward the sky like the fingers of supplicants asking for divine favor. The irony isn't lost on him. He's about to become the kind of god who answers prayers, albeit through methods that would make other deities blanch. Birds call from the canopy above, their songs pure and untroubled by the moral complexities that weigh on his divine conscience. Sometimes he envies creatures who can live entirely in the present moment, unburdened by the weight of future consequences. The landscape gradually changes as he climbs higher, the lush vegetation giving way to hardier plants that can survive in the challenging conditions near the volcanic peak. The path becomes steeper and more treacherous, winding between boulders that radiate heat even in the cool morning air. Steam vents hiss and bubble along the roadside, creating an otherworldly atmosphere that seems appropriate for a journey into rebellion and theft. You notice how Prometheus's movements become more cautious as he approaches the outer boundaries of Hephaestus's domain. Every step must be calculated, every sound muffled, every gesture designed to avoid detection by the various mystical wards and protections that surround the forge. It's like trying to sneak through a house where every floorboard creaks and every door hinge squeaks, except the consequences of discovery are measured in millennia rather than minutes. The heat becomes more intense with each passing hour, and even his divine nature begins to feel the strain of the environment. Sweat beads on his forehead, and his robes stick to his skin in ways that remind him uncomfortably of mortal frailty. The closer he gets to his goal, the more he understands the physical discomfort that his human children face every day. This shared experience of environmental challenge creates a bond between creator and creation that strengthens his resolve. He pauses at a ridge overlooking the main crater, where he can see the smoke and flames that mark the entrance to Hephaestus's workshop. The forge god maintains multiple levels of operation, surface workshops for the less critical work, and deeper chambers where the truly divine flames burn with heat that could melt divine metal itself. The fire he needs to steal burns in those deeper chambers, jealously guarded and considered sacred by all the gods. The sound of hammering echoes across the volcanic landscape, a steady rhythm that speaks of craftsmanship and dedication. Hephaestus is at work, shaping metals and creating wonders that will eventually find their way to the halls of Olympus. The irony cuts deep. The very god whose fire he's about to steal is hard at work, honest and dedicated, while Prometheus prepares to repay that industriousness with theft. The guilt tastes bitter in his mouth, like wine that's been left too long in the sun. You watch as he observes the patterns of activity around the forge, timing the routines and identifying the moments when detection is least likely. Divine beings are creatures of habit just like mortals, and even gods fall into predictable patterns when they're focused on their work. Hephaestus's dedication to his craft becomes a weakness that Prometheus can exploit, though the knowledge brings him no joy. The afternoon sun beats down mercilessly on the volcanic slopes, and the heat becomes almost unbearable even for someone with divine constitution. Prometheus finds shelter in the shadow of a large boulder, using the time to finalize his approach and steel himself for the actual theft. The waiting is almost worse than the action itself. Time to think, time to consider all the ways his plan could go wrong, time to imagine the consequences of discovery. Small lizards skitter across the hot rocks, their quick movements and ability to tolerate extreme temperatures a reminder that adaptation is possible even in the harshest environments. His humans will need to develop similar resilience, but fire will give them the tools to adapt their environment rather than merely enduring it. The gift he's about to steal will be the key that unlocks their potential for true mastery over their circumstances. As the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon, Prometheus knows that the time for action has arrived. Hephaestus follows a predictable schedule, and the window of opportunity is approaching. The risk is enormous, the potential consequences devastating, but the alternative, allowing his children to suffer when he has the power to help them, is unthinkable. Sometimes love requires courage, and courage requires action, even when that action flies in the face of divine law. The volcanic landscape around him seems to pulse with anticipation, as if the very earth knows that history is about to turn on its axis. Steam rises from fissures in the rock, creating ghostly shapes that dance in the heated air like spirits of future possibility. The moment has arrived to transform from observer to actor, from creator to criminal, from dutiful god to rebel with a cause. So as evening approaches and the forge fires burn brightest in the gathering darkness, Prometheus prepares to cross the line between order and chaos, between obedience and love. And so we follow him into the depths of Hephaestus's domain, where the theft that will change the world awaits in chambers of flame and shadow. The entrance to Hephaestus's forge yawns before you like the mouth of a sleeping dragon, and you descend alongside Prometheus into depths where the very air shimmers with heat and possibility. The stone steps are worn smooth by countless divine footsteps, and the walls glow with an inner light that speaks of fires burning since the birth of the world. Each breath draws an air so hot it seems to sear the lungs, even divine ones, and the sound of your footsteps echoes in the vast chambers ahead. The deeper you go, the more overwhelming the sensory assault becomes. The hammering of divine tools against celestial metals creates a rhythm that seems to match the heartbeat of the earth itself, while the roar of flames provides a constant background that drowns out all but the most necessary sounds. The first chamber opens into a vast space where Hephaestus keeps his surface-level workshops, and you can see the evidence of his craftsmanship everywhere. Half-finished weapons lean against walls of black stone, their edges gleaming with an inner light that suggests they're meant for divine hands. Armor pieces hang from hooks like the shed skins of mythical beasts, each one crafted with such skill that they seem to move and breathe in the flickering light of the forge fires. Prometheus moves with careful precision through this maze of divine artistry, his every step calculated to avoid the numerous tripwires and detection spells that Hephaestus has woven throughout his domain. The forge god may be focused on his work, but he's not careless about security. Divine thieves are rare, but not unknown, and the treasures contained within these chambers are worth more than the gross domestic product of several small kingdoms. You can smell the metallic tang of worked iron and bronze, mixed with stranger scents that speak of materials that exist nowhere else in the universe. The air itself seems thick with power, as if breathing it grants temporary access to the fundamental forces of creation and destruction. It's like walking through a perfume shop where every scent is intoxicating, and potentially dangerous if inhaled too deeply. The heat increases with each descending level, and sweat begins to run freely down Prometheus's face despite his divine nature. The deeper chambers hold the truly sacred flames, fires that burn with temperatures that could vaporize mountains and melt the bonds between atoms themselves. These are the flames he needs, not the ordinary fire that mortals might eventually discover on their own, but the divine essence of combustion itself. Hammering echoes from a nearby chamber, and Prometheus freezes against a wall, his heart racing with the proximity of discovery. Hephaestus's voice carries through the stone corridors, muttering to himself as he works, occasionally cursing when a piece doesn't bend exactly as he intended. The forge god's dedication to his craft is both admirable and useful. Absorbed in his work, he's less likely to notice the subtle signs of an intruder in his domain. The corridors branch and twist like the passages of a mind designed by someone who values function over form. Every turn reveals new wonders and new dangers, from pools of molten metal that bubble and hiss with divine energy to weapons that seem to track movement with their own form of artificial awareness. It's like navigating a museum where every exhibit is both priceless and potentially lethal, and the security system has been designed by someone with a very creative approach to home defense. You follow Prometheus deeper into the mountain's heart, where the stone walls themselves begin to glow with heat and the air becomes so thick with power that it feels like swimming through liquid lightning. The sacred flames burn in a chamber ahead, their light visible even around corners and through cracks in the stone. The fire he seeks is close now, so close that he can feel its warmth on his face and taste its power in the air. The final chamber opens before you like a cathedral built to worship the fundamental force of combustion itself. The flames dance in patterns that speak of intelligence and purpose, fed by fuels that exist beyond the physical realm and maintained by divine will rather than simple chemistry. This is fire in its purest form, the template from which all other flames are mere copies, the source code of combustion itself. Prometheus approaches the sacred flame with the reverence of someone who understands exactly what he's about to steal. This isn't just fire. It's the key to civilization, the tool that will transform his children from shivering survivors into masters of their environment. The weight of future history presses down on him as he realizes that this single act will echo through the ages, sparking innovations and discoveries that will reshape the world. The flame seems to sense his approach, flickering and dancing in patterns that suggest awareness of his presence. For a moment, he hesitates, understanding that once he crosses this threshold,